We'll turn my volume down. Because for some reason, I can never get the chat to work on this thing. All right.
I was going to bring it up on my phone, too.
Yeah. So, yeah, I always bring it up on my iPad. Looks like we are live. So we will see if anybody else hops in with us. This one might actually get some watches after the fact. So Ruben is with us already. So
hey, Ruben. How are you, bud?
So, hey, Ruben, welcome to JP's Budget Collecting and my Game of Thrones recap series that we're starting. Tonight, Dave, Mr. Miracle, is joining me.
Hello, everybody.
So, we're just going to, let's see, we got Ruben, we got Old Wolf, we got Perry. So, we got a couple people in the chat here. So, I was just going to start with a little background on how I got into Game of Thrones to start with, like where I was at. I'm going to ask Dave kind of do the same thing, and then we're going to get into season 1. So, and we'll just start at the beginning. But I actually had heard of Game of Thrones, but I never watched any of it. It was like season 4, I think, was coming out. And I had a guy who was working for me who was obsessed. He's like, you need to watch this. You need to watch this. You need to read these books. And he just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I was like, okay. And I finally broke down and read the book. And so I actually read the first 3 books before I ever watched an episode. And then he had the DVDs, and I started watching his DVDs. And then I like tore through those for like the first 3 seasons. And then like in the wait for season 4 to come out, I read the 4th book, and then season 4 came out, and then since then I've just watched the shows because they got ahead of the books at that point. So that's kind of how I got into it. Was a recommendation of a friend. So what about you, Dave?
Yeah, I didn't start right away with it either. My wife was into it. She read the books. I haven't read the books myself. You and I were kind of talking before we started the live chat about that, and she was getting into it. And she's like, "Oh, I really like these books. Now they're going to put out this TV show," and she started watching it. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. You know, it seems kind of, I don't know, right? I don't know what it's about." And but you know, I'd be sitting there and she'd be like, "Oh, I want to watch this episode. I'm going to watch this episode." So she'd put it on TV while I was doing something else. And I kept being like, "What's going on here? And, you know, who's that guy? And what are they doing over there with that stuff?" And I'm like, okay, I'm asking her. I could see she's getting annoyed by all my Game of Thrones questions during every episode. So I decided, okay, I'm going to break down. I went and got the DVD. I watched the first season. They had a replay on TV of the second season, so I was able to catch up on all of that. And then I basically picked it up live at the beginning of the first season, or third season, sorry.
Cool.
But yeah, it was my wife that got me into it. She was the fanatic that was like, "You got to watch this. You got to watch this," or, you know, "Shut up! Stop asking me questions. I'm trying to watch this." You know,
I'm watching
yourself.
So, all right. Well, let's see. It looks like Hialeah has joined us. So hey, Hialeah. So with that, we're just going to get into it, and I was just going to start with the pilot. And you know, in rewatching the pilot, there's a lot there that I didn't realize that they kind of set up in the pilot. And it starts with the opening, like
that's pilot of any TV show ever.
Yeah,
I would say, Jason.
Like go ahead.
It was so Game of Thrones. It was so Game of Thrones. Like that beginning scene, they don't even like say a word. All you see is all these guys dressed in black going through the wall. This wall, you don't even know it's the wall yet at that point. And then off into the wilderness, and then they find all these dead bodies, right? It's like, but yeah, and then they were all set up in this. Am I remembering it right? Jason, you got to help me out there a little bit.
Pattern. Right? They find all the pieces in the pattern,
and this kind of spiral pattern, and you're like, "That's odd."
You're like, what the hell is going on?
Right, and then all of a sudden, it's like whack, this guy gets killed, that guy gets killed, and you know, they're going out there.
And you see this thing with blue eyes.
Right, this dark shadow.
Yeah, and you're like, what the hell is that? And then nothing. And then you don't see a walker the rest of the first season.
I know. So, like, literally that all happens in the first 5 minutes of the entire series of the show. And you're like, it just sets it up so well to be Game of Thrones. Like they start off with a huge mystery. You're like, what? What's going on in the show? Like automatically you're like, who is that guy? Where's going on? Who are these black guys in black? What's all this snow? What's going, completely Game of Thrones style. As soon as they like have the White Walker scenes and then Buddy takes off running, boom, Game of Thrones theme comes up, right?
Yeah. And I feel like I want to talk about the opening, and we'll talk about it in this one and maybe not again, because like that opening where they go around Westeros and show you the map
Yes.
is so perfect, because every episode it like reminds you of where people are at and what's happening. Because there's so much going on, there's so many different characters, it's so easy to lose track of where people are if you don't. But that map, every episode, like I remember reading the books and I kept flipping back to the map, like at the beginning of the book, and going, okay, wait, where is she? Where are they at again? Where is this? And like, but you don't have to do that with the show, because every episode they start you off with that great theme and they show you all these locations and where they are relative to each other. And I just love that.
If you have the patience to sit through it and not just hit the fast forward, but yeah. And apparently
you fast forward through it. But like in the beginning, I remember that being really helpful.
Yes. And then apparently the scenes that they highlight, like the areas that they highlight, are the ones that show up in that episode.
Yes.
Right. So it kind of gives you an idea of like, oh, good, we're going to get a Jon Snow episode this time, or we're going to get, some with Stannis Baratheon or whatever, right? So
yeah. So let's see what else. So yeah, it was just great. And then like from the beginning, like as you get like all the different introductions to like some of the main characters, you figure out right away that Theon's kind of an ass because he's kind of on like in the first scene. You get that Ned is this, very noble and serious leader, and he takes his position like with importance. You get kind of the essence of Ned. You see kind of the bitterness of Jon right off the bat. I mean, all the introductions are perfect, but the best one in that first episode right at the beginning is Tyrion's. And I don't know if you remember, because you haven't watched it, you said recently, but do you remember what's happening when we see Tyrion for the first time?
He's drinking wine in bed with a girl of the evening.
Yeah, he's drinking wine, and the whore is giving him a blowjob. And
that's right. She's down on her knees in front of him.
And it's like, wait, what is happening here? And it just sets the whole tone for him, because Jamie comes in and their banter, and it's just so good. It's like, how could you better set this guy up?
Like, I do remember that scene, but I could have just said that for any scene with Tyrion. I'd pretty much have like a 80% shot of getting it right,
Let's see. A while ago. I'm not sure what highlight is talking about there. A little while ago, I missed the live chat. Well, worth it. So let's see. What else were my other things that? So the other character you meet that is like so strange right off the bat is after they kind of leave what's going on at Winterfell, and so you get introduced to the Starks, you get introduced to the King. You get introduced to Joffrey, who also is an ass from moment one. And then they flash over to, was it Perth or where? I forget the name of that town. But and you meet Dany, and she is like in the very first scene, basically she's naked, and and Viserys is being an absolute a-hole to his sister. And it's just like, okay, and she seems so like meek, and like the whole interaction with him, she's so like you could tell she's just like terrified of him. But then after he leaves, like when she goes into the bath and the lady's like, "Oh, it's too hot, you can't go in there," or whatever, and you see the look on her face, and it's like, okay, there's more to her than what we've just seen. And she made it
her brother, Viserys, how do you pronounce it again?
Viserys.
Yeah, like right off the bat, that actor, he nailed it for Viserys being a total dick. Like right off the hop, he was creepy dickhead right off the start, and definitely like could tell that he was one of those people that thought he was owed everything.
Yeah,
right.
And you can go ahead.
And he didn't give a crap about Dany. He was good. He was telling her, what was it? He'd let Drago and his 40,000 men, rape her, and all of their horses rape her if that's what it took.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's really creepy. It sets him up really well. The actor did a great job. She's very, very demure. She's very submissive to him, right? Not the Oh wait, I'm not gonna spoil anything. Go ahead.
Yeah, and but it also sets up like right off the bat that like he thinks he's owed everything, but he's one of those people that you can tell like is never gonna get anything because he's not capable.
He doesn't have the charisma to get people to give him what he wants.
He's not. Yeah. He's just selfish. So
exactly.
And so yeah, so that's a really good like introduction. Let's see. What else was there in that first episode that was really good that I wanted to talk about? And then right off the bat, you get Jon, the first interaction of Jon and Tyrion, which I thought it's really good. And it's where he calls you the bastard, and Jon gets like, all upset or whatever. You can tell he just doesn't like it, and he's like, Tyrion starts educating him from that first moment. He's like, wear it like armor, because no one's ever going to let you forget it. And if anybody knows about being mistreated because of something out of their control, it's Tyrion being an imp.
They definitely bond over that scene of them both being outcasts in a way,
Yeah.
Even though Jon's still a little wary of Tyrion, he knows Tyrion's a Lannister. Right?
Yeah.
You could still tell he's still a little leery, but he kind of also knows that Tyrion is an outsider in the Lannisters, right?
Yeah. And it just sets up a dynamic that plays through the whole first half of the season of that I won't get into too much, as we'll get into more, but those two, and really Tyrion trying to because I think Tyrion sees a little bit of himself in him, because Jon is just like bitter about it at this stage of his life. He's not like come to understand and accept and make it like his own and like use it to strengthen him. Instead, he's just letting it eat him, that he's, a bastard. And like that whole ride, everything, Tyrion just spends that whole time like basically like, no man, you are who you are. You gotta own it. You gotta make it yours.
Yeah, so they definitely bond there. And there's also an important element of that conversation where Tyrion asks Jon about his mother.
Yeah.
And Jon says, I never knew my mother. My father's never told me about her. I don't know anything, about her or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really important point to bring up in Jon's whole big story arc.
Yes.
I'm trying not to spoil anything, right?
Yeah, no, you're not. I'm going to give quick shout outs. It looks like we've got a few other people that joined us. Unruly Simeon, hey, Night Tiger. I guess those are it. It looks like them and Hialeah and Perry. So thanks, guys, for joining us.
Hey, Night Tiger. Hi, hallelujah. Yeah, so, but that's like, you're going to see that whole thing about Jon not knowing who his mother is kind of as a reoccurring point in a lot of this first few seasons, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to hit home again here in this first season a few more times.
Yeah, it does. Right? It definitely does.
Yeah, so this is kind of the real first time Jon sets it up where we're kind of like, oh, who is Jon's mother? What's going on here, right?
Yeah. And, and it also sets up this whole thing with Ned, because he has this, he comes across as this guy who's honor first, and yet he has a bastard. And it's like, it doesn't quite add up in his character, but, don't want to get too far into like spoilers and why he doesn't want to talk about it. And so.
I know why, but,
we'll get there eventually. So, but, So the other thing that I kind of skipped over was the whole reason that that the King Robert comes to Winterfell for his friend Ned is because his hand has died. The John Arryn is dead, who was the hand of the king, who was like a father to both Ned and Robert. So that's why he comes. And he's trying to get Ned to take over that role, but they get the letter from Caitlyn's, Ned's wife's sister. I haven't talked about her yet. That the Lannisters killed, that John Arryn was murdered, that it wasn't, he didn't die because he got sick, that the Lannisters killed him. And that sets up, Ned, who's like not wanting to go, I don't even think he's going to. He's preparing to tell Robert no, although he probably wouldn't have. But he's coming across like he's prepared to tell Robert no until they get the letter. And then he's like, no, I have to go and protect my friend. And that letter that we learn more about as the seasons go along basically starts everything that happens during the show. That letter is the kickoff of everything that's to come. It's because of that letter.
Yeah, that letter is a pretty important plot point. Again, you don't see it at this point.
Yeah.
Right. If we just, like I said, this pilot was really, almost perfect for setting up the whole show. It really, really was great. And I know you and I'll spend a little more time on the pilot because it was so good. We'll get through some of the other episodes faster, but
yeah,
there was so much set up in here in this first pilot episode, and so much that carries forward for seasons.
Yes.
And it's like, you're just like, wow, like these guys were really thinking ahead, these writers, right?
Yeah. There's only there's still three things that I wanted to get to in the pilot.
Go. Sorry.
We'll go quicker, and that is the one is just a really fun interaction I like, which is Ned and Jamie. And Jamie tries like, oh, it'd be nice to have you in like the melees and have some new competition. And Ned's like, I don't compete. And he's like, well, why not? And he's like, because when I fight a man, I don't want to know what I can do. And I think that's like so perfect for their two characters. Is Ned, if he's going to fight somebody, he's going to do it for real. Whereas Jamie just likes to brag and boast and show off. Yeah. Like, it's why he competes. He wants to show off how good he is. Whereas Ned doesn't want anybody to know if he's good or not, because he might actually have to fight that person. And it's just their whole perspective that really sets up where they come from during this whole first season.
Yeah, Jamie is definitely a show off. Like, that's part of his character. He's a rich kid, right? Like, yes. And Ned is definitely a soldier, and he's very much that old school knight, right? Like everything for Ned's around honor. He's not going to just fight you just to fight you. He's going to do it if you've done something that deserves the fight,
Yeah. All right. Last two things from the first episode is Daenerys obviously gets married to Drogo, and we meet Jorah for the first time, and then she is given the eggs. These stone dragon eggs that like they've turned to stone through time. So she gets the eggs in the end of the first episode. And then the last thing that occurs is we see Bran, who we've heard about all through the episode about how he climbs on everything, right. climbing the tower and hearing the noises and like, what's going on? And finding Cersei and Jamie together and being like, go ahead.
And like in typical Game of Thrones style, all you see is Jamie having sex with a blonde girl whose head's down, right? You don't see her. Right. And all of a sudden he lifts her up and it's his sister. And we're all like, oh no, not your sister.
Like, what kind of TV show is this?
I'm like, okay, this show, I just took a left turn a little bit here.
Yeah.
But when Jamie lifts up her head in the big reveal, that's when she sees Bran. Right. He's climbed up the tower and he's looking in the window there.
And then, then Jamie goes over to him and like gets a hold of him. and Cersei's like freaking out. He saw us. And, you know, you don't really think anything that he's going to do anything because the little kid, and Jamie's like standing there, and then he's like holding on to him, like actually pulls him in, and then he's like, what I don't do for love, and just throws him out the window.
That's right.
And the episode ends.
Yeah, it was like a total psycho because at first he had him like gripped pretty hard. All of a sudden he kind of relaxes his grip, kind of straightens out his shirt, and then just shoves him out the window. I was like, oh man.
It's like, what is happening in the last? So like the first 5 minutes, you're introduced to this freaky scene that they don't do any with the walker and the dead bodies that you don't get any more exposition on. And then in the last 5 minutes, you get a brother and sister, the queen and a knight, the member of the Kingsguard, having sex, and they push what appears to be one of the main characters of the show out a window, apparently to his demise. Is what, you know. It's like, what an episode. It's just amazing.
Exactly. Like, this has only been an hour, right? We've only been an hour of the entire run of the whole show. We've seen the White Walkers or had a taste of them. We don't know what's going on there. We've been introduced to several characters. We've watched Ned Stark behead a guy. There's been a wedding. We've seen a brother strip his sister naked. We've seen a brother having sex with his sister. We've seen a 10-year-old boy get killed. Like, I mean, and this is like, what? Wow. Like, and we don't even know who these characters are yet. This is like the very first episode.
So it's just, there's so much. So we're trying to, like, we're going to move on, but the pilot is just so good. It's just such a good episode that I wanted to spend a little more time on it. But yeah, we've been going for like 20 minutes and we're on the pilot.
Okay, yeah, no, let's rush it through it. But yeah, we did spend more on the pilot, but the pilot, a 10 out of 10 on that episode for me. Like, it you know, when I actually sat down and watched the series and I watched the pilot, boom, I was hooked for sure.
Yeah, that's all it took to hook me was the pilot. And just like, okay, I have to know what's happening.
Yes. Okay, we will speed it up here.
Yeah, we're going to try to speed up at least. Okay. So, the second episode, one of the opening things is, so we see that Bran is alive, but like in a coma, basically. And like early on, we get two interactions that are important. We see Tyrion wakes up with the dogs, like he's just sleeping with the hounds, like outside.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So like the hound actually wakes him up, and like he's like, "Hey," and then whatever. So he gets up, and Joffrey comes up, and is being Joffrey, and like Tyrion's like, "You're gonna go give your condolences to the Starks about Bran," and he's like, why would I do that? I don't care about that kid. He's nothing to me. And, you know, and being the entitled little prick that he is, and Tyrion beats the crap out of him until he, like, goes and does it. Makes him cry, basically. And trying to teach him some manners. And the hound says something that, like, the prince will not forget that little man. And, like, Tyrion's like, good. But Joffrey doesn't forget that as it goes forward, and as things happen, like that, you know, treating him that way is maybe not Tyrion's best approach.
Joffrey doesn't take stuff like that very well. He definitely holds grudges.
Yes. The other thing that we see, and like in rewatching it, I had a hard time like early in that episode is Cersei comes and visits Catelyn while she's overseeing Bran. And she tells a story about losing her first child that was their first kid, her and Robert's first kid, and it dying as a baby or whatever. And you know that she's responsible for Bran being in the situation that he's in, and it's so hard
did I lose you?
to tell is she being like Lena Headey does such a fantastic job in that scene that you feel sympathy for Cersei, who you know is the person that's the reason this little boy is in a coma and maybe gonna die. And it's like And and you can't tell how much of it is actually real. It seems all of it's real, what she's saying, and yet she's telling lies during it because she's the one responsible for him being there.
Yeah, exactly. And we get a good sense of really who Cersei is in that scene because we realize she is a really cold, calculating, bitch.
Yeah,
right? She's willing to do whatever it takes, say whatever it takes, lie to whoever's face in order to get what she wants. And what she wants is Bran dead. Right?
Yeah. But yet she's like selling it that she really that she feels bad about the situation, and no, she doesn't at all. She actually feels bad because he's not dead yet.
No, and the actress that plays her, I forget her name. Sorry.
Lena Headey.
Lena Headey is just fantastic in the role. Like,
God, she is amazing. She owns that character in a way that's just fantastic.
Yeah, so many of the actors in the show do, but she's a real standout for sure.
Yeah. So the next interaction we see, there's a couple of them with Jon, because we didn't talk about it in the pilot, but something else. It's Ned's brother, Jon's uncle, had come from the Wall. He's a member of the Night's Watch, and Jon has decided to join the Night's Watch. That happened in the pilot too. And but Jon is saying goodbye to Arya, who's getting ready to head south with her dad to go to King's Landing to be the hand, and he gives her needle, and he gives her a sword, because we learn in the pilot again that Arya is a little girl that doesn't want to be a little girl. She doesn't want to be a lady. She wants to be she wants to have adventures and be strong and fight. And
she's a tomboy.
Yeah, she's very much a tomboy, and you could tell that her and Jon are particularly close amongst the siblings. And he gives her a sword and this little bitty thin blade that even little bitty Arya can wield, and she gives it the name Needle. And Needle, it's amazing how much of a role Needle plays going forward too.
Exactly, that sword is still in Stanza's hands, right? In Arya's hands.
Yeah.
And it really shows the closeness of those two characters.
And then the other part there's actually 3 parts of Jon's goodbye to go north that are really important in this scene. There's that one. Then there's the scene where he goes and tries to say goodbye to Bran. And you see just how horribly this supposed really nice mother and Caitlin has been to Jon, who's a bastard. Like how bitter she is about that he even exists.
Yeah, she hates him.
She hates him. And won't even let him really say goodbye to his brother, who may or may not live. She won't even allow him to really have a goodbye, a moment with his little brother. And because she hates him that much.
Yeah.
And so you get that scene, and Ned walks in on it. And then you get, as Ned, Sansa, and Arya are headed south, and with the king, Jon splits off with Benjen to go to the Wall, and Ned and Jon asks about his mother. And Ned says,
I'll tell you the next time I see you.
I'll tell you the next time I see you. And it's only later that you truly realize why he's waiting, what he's waiting for to do that.
Yeah, but
this is for Jon to take his vows, where he gives up. But he's waiting for Jon to actually be a member of the Night's Watch, and why we won't learn for a long time. But that's actually why he's waiting.
Yeah, I know. It's the writers totally knew what was coming in a few episodes, so being like, "Oh, we'll tell the audience who Ned or who's Jon's mother is," but Ned will do it in a couple episodes, right? Okay,
I'm losing you.
Oh, sorry. Keep going, bud. Did I lose you again?
It'll only be a couple more episodes. Don't worry about it. Oh, no, you're back. You're back. You just for a second there, you cut out. So, what else? Was there anything else that really happens? Oh, so the next big thing, so Jon and Tyrion go to the Wall, and Jon's faced with the reality of what the Night's Watch is. And then it's thieves and murderers and everybody else is sent to the Night's Watch to serve or to avoid punishment. And and then he talks about Grumpkins and Snarks, the things beyond the wall that nobody believes in anymore, but we've already seen in episode 1, or there's something still up there. And then the next thing we get is the assassin. Like, they set fire to part of Winterfell, and so Rob runs off, but stays with Bronn, and the assassin comes for Bronn. And I just realized we went the whole first episode and we didn't mention the wolves. That's
the wolves.
That's something else in the first episode is they find the direwolf pups. And
so they're coming through the woods and they find like it's dead stag and then another dead stag, but there's also a dead wolf with them. And she's had 6 pups. And then all the Starks get one, and then Jon Snow gets one as well.
Yeah.
And they're dire wolves. Okay. Yeah. Good. Keep going. We caught up.
Yeah. So all the kids have been raising these pups and they're growing like super fast because they're basically giant wolves. If you don't know what a dire wolf is, it's like a monster wolf. It's like going to be 3 or 4 times the size of a normal wolf. And Bronn's wolf, Summer, comes in and kills the assassin, saves him and Catelyn from this assassin that's come back to kill the little boy. So obviously the first thing you think is this got to be done by the Lannisters, but because they don't, Jaime and Cersei, because they don't want Bronn to wake up and people to find out what happened. It's the assumption. And that's basically the assumption that Catelyn makes to head. So she decides to leave and follow Ned south to tell him what she's learned or what's happened.
She heads for King's Landing.
So the other thing that happens in this episode is that on the road south, there's a couple of basically Sansa has been, which also happened in episode 1, is Sansa has been, the oldest daughter of Ned, has been betrothed to Joffrey, the oldest son, the Prince Joffrey, who's going to be king. Robert and Ned have set them up that they're going to be married. And on the road, they're like walking together, and they come across Arya basically practicing swordplay with this little butcher's boy who she's just met along the road. And Joffrey, being the a-hole that he is, pulls out his real sword and basically threatens this kid. And Arya hits him, and then he threatens to kill Arya, and Nymeria, which is Arya's wolf, bites him. And Joffrey freaks out like the little baby that he actually is, if anybody actually like stands up to him. And so Arya and the wolf run off, and all this goes down. And basically, the end result is Arya has to send her wolf away so they won't kill it. So Nymeria goes away, and Arya and Joffrey are brought in front of the king to find out what happened. And Joffrey tells his story, Arya tells her story, and so they bring Sansa up to find out what actually happened. And she doesn't doesn't say anything. She just lies and says she doesn't know. And
she doesn't back up her sister.
Joffrey to get in trouble because she knows she's gonna have to marry him. So, and she thinks she's in love with him because she's a stupid little girl at this point in her life. And it just pisses Arya off to no end. Arya and Sansa do not get along. It's just but the end result is Sansa's wolf. Ned ends up having to kill Sansa's wolf because it didn't do anything, but it's a wolf.
Yeah, I know. So they couldn't find Arya's wolf, so they're like, okay, well, we'll kill Sansa's wolf. Like, what? Why? But that, I don't know. So they end up killing one of the dire wolves there. He's the first dire wolf to die.
Yeah. So that is basically and then the last thing in episode 2 is Bronn wakes up. Like, after Catelyn has left, Bronn, you just see his eyes open, and that's the end of episode 2. We get quick shout outs. It looked like John's Comics with Kid has come and gone while we were talking. here. So hey, Discovery Bay. Hey, JB. So that was episode 2. I don't know. We were a little quicker, but not much.
Okay. No, we get through this. Let's episode 3. So what's going on? So Ned's now in King's Landing, right?
Yes. So he arrives at the small council meeting right off the bat and learns that the king does nothing and the kingdom's in debt. And
they're broke. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's gonna have to do all the work because Robert's not interested in actually being king. So
so and then there's a scene where they're talking about the dagger.
Yeah, so that's later.
Go ahead.
Actually, does that happen? Does the dagger happen in this episode? Does it actually happen in this episode? Oh, yes, it does.
Right? Yeah, this is where Littlefinger talks about the dagger.
Yeah, she shows up with and they basically, she goes to, Baelish knows that she's coming. Littlefinger knows that she's coming, and he brings her and Ned together, and he basically points the finger for the owner of the dagger at Tyrion.
Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah, he says that it used to be his dagger, but he lost it to Tyrion Lannister. And so they immediately are blaming Tyrion for this. So Catelyn actually ends up, by the end of the episode, heading back north because they don't have any proof, because all Tyrion has to say is that he lost it, or the assassin stole it. And so they're in search of proof. So this sends Ned down the path of trying to figure out why Jon Arryn was killed, what he knew. Let's say, yeah, go ahead.
This dagger is important too. It keeps showing up again and again in the next seasons.
It's the first time you hear the words when they're talking about it as being Valyrian steel.
Valyrian steel wrapped in dragon glass, right?
Yeah. And so that's the first time you hear that term for a sword or a blade of any kind is with this dagger.
Yes.
Other things that happen in season 3 or in episode 3, there's a really good scene where Cersei basically teaches Joffrey that the truth is whatever they make it, because she basically, because he's telling the truth about what happened with him and the wolf. He's talking about what happened with him and the wolf. And she just makes up the story to make him sound brave and important, and that the truth is what they make it, and that whoever is not them, whatever it wants, everyone who isn't us is an enemy.
Yes.
And so she's teaching this boy these lessons, the boy who's going to be king, these just horrible lessons right off the bat. This, paranoid. So you see what he becomes later, that why he's the way he is right in this scene.
Yeah. He's definitely mama's boy. He gets it from his mom.
The other thing, there's a couple cool scenes with Ned and Arya in this. One where he finds her with Needle, and he tells her she can keep it. And the other is, which I didn't realize that he doesn't actually say the quote they use later, because he just says in winter we must protect ourselves and look after each other. He doesn't actually say the line that you hear in the later seasons where they talk about the lone wolf dies and the pack survives. He doesn't actually say it, which I've forgotten. I just assumed because they use it so much later that I assumed he said it that way, but he did not.
Is this episode where we see the Swordmaster? Is this where Arya gets her first lesson? Or
let's see.
I'm totally screwing up your notes, man. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I'm just trying to find it. And no, we do not. I don't have Serial Thrall. I don't think he shows up till the next episode.
Okay.
So I don't think he does. At least I'm not seeing him. The other thing that we find out in this is the episode where Dany starts actually asserting herself with Khal Drogo and trying to become more than just his object and actually make it. She starts she starts working with the other girl that the slave girl that used to be in a whorehouse to learn how to like please him and and she starts becoming assertive.
Yeah, and she starts to understand her place as kind of queen now.
Yes,
yeah.
And that all here.
She really starts to fall in love with him, like for real.
Yes.
Right? It's not just an arranged marriage anymore. She's actually starting to feel really strong feelings for Drago.
Yes. So the other thing is that we learned that, like, oh no, I was wrong. Like, Curio does show up right at the end. The water dancer does show up right at the end of the episode. So I did miss that. That was that's like right at the last thing that happens is Arya gets her dance instructor.
Because he's such a cool character.
Oh my gosh, he is I love his character. Yes. And then the only other thing that happens that's really important in this is, well, there's two things. John arrives at the wall, and basically, let's see, he arrives at the wall. Tyrion basically educates John a couple more times about, like, because John is very bitter and angry because he's better than everyone, and he doesn't, and he almost gets himself killed by his own brothers before he becomes a knight. Because he's such an a-hole to everybody when he first gets there.
He just basically kicks everybody's ass, right?
Yeah.
He's a nobleman. His dad's been a soldier. He's had all this formal training. These guys are thieves and beggars and outcasts, right? They don't even know how to fight at all. So, or John just walks in there and kicks all their butts.
Yeah, and he just thinks that makes him better than them. He's just better than them, and they almost kill him, but Tyrion saves him, and then basically educates him on where these guys come from, what their story is. John, you think you've had it tough. You don't have an idea just because you were you don't have any clue what tough is. You had it tough compared to your siblings who had it super easy, but you don't know what tough is. And basically you see a change in John where instead of like just kicking their ass and making them look like fools, he starts trying to actually teach them and help them as they're learning. And then the other thing in this episode that is kind of important is Tyrion then leaves, and Tyrion does what his whole goal for going to the wall and seeing the wall was to begin with, which was pissing off the edge of the world. So he goes to the top of the wall, and then him and John then say goodbye. So and they leave on very good terms, because of course John doesn't know any of anybody else suspects that the Lannisters are responsible for what happened to Bran or anything like that. And then
he doesn't know very much about.
Yeah, he doesn't know any of that at this point. So him and Tyrion leave on very good terms. And then the last thing is we learn that Bran is a cripple. That in this episode, like officially, that he's awake, but he's a cripple, and he supposedly does not remember anything that happened. So that was episode 3, which was what Lord Snow is what they called it, because the guy who's training them doesn't particularly like John at all. Alistair does not like John at all.
He doesn't like anybody, that guy.
No, he doesn't like anybody, but he really doesn't like John.
No, he thinks John's a pretty boy.
Yeah. And then, so we get into episode 4, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. And this is the first time this episode opens, and several episodes open this way going forward, or there's with Bran chasing this raven, like dreaming that he still has his legs, and following this raven, and the raven turns around and it has 3 eyes. And then Bran. Yeah. So the 3 eyes. Also something that's going to be very important later on. So that's how that opens. We learn in this episode early on, this is the first time we learned that, like, we've seen Theon interact with the Stark kids, and we know he's like kind of like Rob's retainer or his, brother in arms or whatever, but we learned for the first time that Theon.
Oh, I lost you.
Actually, but we learned that technically he's there against his will. And then we get the other thing that happens early is Samwell is finally introduced. He arrives and he's this fat, uncoordinated coward. He doesn't want to fight, and he was there that we learned. Did we learn in this episode?
Yeah, we learned why he's there.
We learn right off the bat, like later, like he just gets beat up initially, and then John ends up trying to protect him. And John asks him, "What are you doing here, Sam?" And we get the story of why Sam went to the wall, which is basically
his dad was embarrassed.
Yeah, his dad was embarrassed of him. His dad was a lord who was a renowned general, and he basically says, "Give up your claim to the house, all your claim to any of your inheritance, and take the black, or the next time we go on a hunt, you're not coming back." And so, being the coward that he is, Sam takes the black, and so that's the introduction. We hear that from him. Is there anything else? So that's really the introduction, and he and John immediately kind of become friends. Because of that.
Sam is a great character. It's one of my favorite characters for the whole series.
Yes, he is a fantastic character. We see the other thing. There's a really small scene that I didn't realize it's like of Viserys with this slave girl, like basically in a tub, and they're just talking.
Yeah.
But she brings up two things during this that, like, at the time you don't think nothing about. But she talks about dragon glass and faceless men, like in this episode, this early on. Neither of these things, like, do we learn about till much later, and it's just a throwaway mention, but it's kind of cool. They laid the groundwork here in episode 4 for things that were going to be important.
Yes, I'm not sure. Was it this episode where when Bran wakes up and he's talking to that old woman?
That was actually episode 3, I think, where he talks to her and she tells the story of the long night and the White Walkers.
If you listen to that woman's speech, she basically lays out everything that's going to happen in the next 6 seasons.
Yeah, she does.
So they do that kind of thing, like with the girl in the tub, quite a bit in Game of Thrones, where it just seems to be some sort of a casual speech, but then the character's actually telling you of these big important events that are about to happen way down the way, down the road.
Let's see what else is really. The other thing is Ned goes and talks to Grand Maester Pycelle and learns what John Arryn was like looking for. That John Arryn looked for this book of lineages, and it basically leads Ned to this, and Baelish basically lead Ned to the first of Robert's bastards, and we meet Gendry for the first time.
Right.
And Ned learns it, but Ned doesn't put together why anyone cares about Robert's bastards at this point. But like, that's the first time we actually meet one of Robert's bastards, and we meet Gendry. Let's see, anything else? We kind of see like Ned falling for Baelish's manipulations during this part. And then we have like one of the best conversations for me, and that between Ned and Arya, where he talks about, someday she'll marry a lord and her sons will be knights and this kind of stuff. And she goes, "No, that's not me."
Yeah.
And he just looks at her, but she's dead serious. That's not me. That's not who I'm going to be. And he doesn't like challenge her on it, and he continues to let her take her water dancing lessons, her sword fighting lessons. But you see very early that Arya and Sansa are very different people, and what Arya wants is a very different life than what's laid out for her as a girl in this world. Because women in this world, in the Game of Thrones world, don't have very many paths for the most part.
No, I mean, it doesn't seem that way at first, but the women have a lot to do with this story.
They do. Like, it's like the general view is that they don't, but yet as we go through the story, you're absolutely correct. Like, the women in the story actually, in many ways, have much more power than most of the men.
Yes, it's coming down to basically two women right now.
So, anything else?
Tyrion was captured, of course.
So so at the end of the episode, oh well, there's one other thing before we get to there is Danny and Jorah have a conversation. Like as Danny continues to like see herself as kind of find her way. And I'm trying to think if this is the one. And she finally realizes that Viserys is a fool and that he'll never sit on the Iron Throne. Like she has a conversation with Jorah that where she comes to the realization that her brother's just not capable. He's not a leader. And so that's kind of for her, that's a big revelation because she's went from this already in 4 episodes. She's went from this meek girl who's just cowers in front of her brother to a Khaleesi and understanding her brother's failings and that if a Targaryen's ever going to sit on the throne again, it's not going to be him. And so that's kind of a big step. We get the story of the Mountain and the Hound and how the Hound became scarred. So that's kind of a big thing.
That's an important one because I mean that's the first time we see the Mountain and the Hound fight as well, right? At the tournament.
Yeah, at the tournament.
And we've been waiting for Game of Thrones fans have been waiting for that fight since then. They haven't fought since then.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen in season 8, I'll be very disappointed.
So, and let's see. And then the last thing is Tyrion coming south, Caitlyn going north, meet in an inn. Tyrion recognizes her, and Caitlyn makes the mistake that sets everything else in motion for the rest of this season and beyond. And that instead of knowing she doesn't have proof, instead of like trying to wait and get justice another way, she takes Baelis's word that Tyrion did it, and she takes him captive. And that, that basically sets the whole rest of this season. That is the turning point of this entire season. When she makes that decision, everything that happens is directly because of that.
Exactly. It's a huge plot point for what's going to happen here for a while.
Yeah, so it is definitely the climax kind of the season of, or the turning point or however you want to put it. So
it's also the first time we meet the character Bronn.
Yes, and we don't really meet him yet, but we see him. And that's something I want to talk about here I don't know if it's the next episode.
The next episode
is where you really actually get his full introduction. And his first couple of lines are just perfect. He maybe has a better introduction than even like Tyrion in some ways, because it's just like he is, to me, my favorite character that they improved for the show from the books. Like his and Tyrion's interaction is good in the books, but not near what it is in the. Like most of those conversations don't happen in the books, and they happen in the show. So we'll just kind of get into it, season 5, and we'll go right to Bronn and Tyrion. So Caitlyn tells everybody when she captures him that she's taking him back to Winterfell, but she's actually taking him to the Eyrie, where her sister lives, which is the home of Jon Arryn, who her sister was married to. And she goes that way, thinking that way people will chase them in the wrong direction, thinking her sister will be an ally. And on the way there, they get attacked by some mountain tribes, and Tyrion actually saves her life from getting killed. But when they get done, like the first words we really hear Bronn speak, he's laughed at a couple of Tyrion's jokes, but the first words we speak is, after the battle is done, he's like, "You need a woman," or whatever. And Tyrion's like, "What?" And he's like, "There's nothing better after a battle than a woman." He's like, and then and Tyrion says something, "Well, I'm game if she is," and he looks at Caitlyn.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And then
that was a good line.
Which is, so you get their first little bit of banter, and then when they arrive at the Eyrie, Tyrion, they're right next to each other. Tyrion says something along the line. It says, the Eyrie, they say it's impregnable. And Bronn goes, give me 10 good men with climbing spikes and I'll impregnate the bitch.
Right.
And that's the first two lines he speaks is, you need a woman and I'll impregnate the bitch. And it's just like, the banter between these two are just like, it's perfectly set up from this moment forward. It's like one of my favorite moments of the whole first series because I just love Bronn as a character. He's just one of my favorite characters in the whole show.
Me too. He is the Han Solo of Game of Thrones. His character is fantastic for sure. He's the quintessential mercenary out for money, right? But I mean, he's got a sense of honor as well.
He does, but there's a line later in the season I want to talk about too, which is like where you see what his honor really is. But yeah.
I remember the line now. Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. We get there's a lot of like intrigue in this episode, but we get basically the whole thing with Varys trying to like warn Ned. And we get the one thing we do get in this episode that is we get the first of several scenes of Varys and Baelish, Littlefinger, in the throne room by themselves talking. And you see that these two guys respect but do not like each other. And they're always like trying to figure out what the other one's up to and one up or control what's happening because they're both just master manipulators.
Yeah,
and they're not working to the same end.
It's always a contest between who has the most secrets with those two. Like both have the same kind of spy.
And following that whole scene, we get the and I don't remember if I mentioned it before, but we learned that Dany was pregnant in the previous episode, and we get Robert orders her death. And Ned's like, will not hear it and resigns. He will.
Yeah, he resigns from being the hand of the king, right?
Will not be a part of trying. Yeah.
Yeah, if he finds it dishonorable, Ned finds the whole thing dishonorable. He won't be part of killing a pregnant woman and her kid. And resigns as hand of the king.
And he's going to leave. He's like packing his stuff to go. And he allows Baelish to trick him by dangling. I was going to show you the last person that John Aaron talked to before he died. So Ned does it. He stays and does it, and he gets. So he basically just finds another one of Robert's bastard children. But when he comes out with just a couple of guards, Jaime and a whole bunch of Lannisters are waiting for him.
Right. Yep.
And they because Jaime has learned that Ned's wife has taken Tyrion captive, and they basically kill Ned's men really quickly, and he and Ned get into a duel, basically, even though they're surrounded by Jaime's men. It's just the two of them fighting. And you can see early in the fight, Jaime thinks, oh, this is fun. I'm going to kill this guy. And as the fight goes on, you can see on his face that it's like, okay, he's better than I thought he was. And this is a challenge. And then, as it gets, and I might actually lose, and then it's interrupted by one of the Lannister men, stabbing Ned in the back of the leg. And you see that, to a certain degree, Jaime does have some honor because instead of finishing Ned right there, he rides away. He leaves because he doesn't want to have, he doesn't want to say that the only way he beat him was because someone interfered with him, with the fight.
He wants to challenge Ned and beat him mano a mano, straight up know that he beat him.
Yes. And, so despite everything you've seen in this early season that makes you not like Jaime or think he's basically this, there is in this moment, there is a little bit of honor to him that you haven't really seen up to this point. What else is happening in this episode that's actually important? Oh, the other thing that we see is we see the first scene of Loris and Renly, who's Robert's younger brother. Actually, he's got a middle brother, Stannis, that we haven't seen yet, and then he has Renly, who's his youngest brother. And we see that Renly and the Knight of Flowers, who we've been introduced to earlier, are lovers. And we see that Loris puts in Renly's head the first time that he should be king, which plays a role later as well.
Right.
That he would be a better king than Robert. And the only other thing that I feel like that's really even like slightly important in this episode is we do get a scene, a really good scene of Robert and Cersei together, where they're talking about what's holding the kingdom together, and it's their marriage, and they both laugh because their marriage is such a sham. And and they
absolutely hate each other.
Yeah, and Robert talks about meeting why he wants to kill Daenerys and meeting the Dothraki on the field, and why they. And you see that Robert actually, despite the fact that he's acted like a fool the whole season, when it comes to military things, you see why he won, why he became
king, right?
Like that he militarily. Go ahead.
He's a good soldier.
Yeah, and there's a really point in there, like Cersei gives him some advice or says something about what she would do, and he's like, you do this amazing trick. You open your mouth and your father speaks, and and you haven't met Tywin yet. He's been this overarching presence throughout the first season to this point, but we haven't met Tywin yet. But yeah, so that's another kind of big moment in there. And then the other thing that happens during that scene, it's a really good scene, is she asked Robert if there was ever a time that he had, because she says that she loved him at the beginning, but realized that he still was mourning Ned's sister, and she asked if there was ever a time that there was a chance for that she could have been a place in his heart, and he says no. And that you see on her face that that's maybe the end for him. And she's not going to forget that.
No, that hurt her feelings.
Yeah, that hurt her. And let's see. So with that, we're moving on to episode 6. Good grief, we've been going forever. Got to
halfway, buddy, halfway.
Yeah, there's just too much in all of these. We get basically it opens with Ned waking up after being attacked and not really sure what's going on. And Cersei, Robert actually strikes her because she says he should, Ned should be in irons for attacking her brother. And then basically Robert puts the Hand of the King badge back on him and says, "You're taking it off again, or I'm giving it to Jaime Lannister," which is the worst threat he could give him. We see and one thing I haven't talked about, because we talked about them that they showed up in the first episode, but every time they flash to Dany and stuff, almost that whole first season, they show the eggs before they show what's happening. They show the eggs all the time, and we actually see her put them in the fire. She puts an egg in the fire, and then she pulls it out hot. And it doesn't burn her hands, but it burns the servant girl's hands who tries to take it from her to protect her. And so that's the first time we really see that, there's been hints at it all the time, but that she potentially can't be burned. It's or there's something different about her.
We start to see that it's not her brother who's the dragon; it's her.
No,
right?
She's the dragon.
The fire.
And then later we get the most disgusting thing of her eating the horse heart. They've arrived their holy place, and she's got to eat this horse heart, and it is just gross. But
she does it, and she gains a lot of respect from the
she basically becomes to the Dothraki she becomes a real Khaleesi at that point by doing that. Like and Viserys says something to Jorah of, these people see her in a way they'll never see me, and really registers that this is not going to work out the way he wants it to at this point. That these people are going to follow her and not him.
But you see his attitude. He's always like, oh, I know this law, but that doesn't apply to me, or I'm the dragon and I'm the king and I don't have to listen to what they're doing and I don't care about their culture. And he's always calling them savages. So, of course, they're not going to have any respect for him, right? Yeah. Whereas Daenerys, she's gotten right into it. She's doing whatever she can to become part of this tribe.
Yes. And we actually missed it, but or I think it was in the previous episode, there's a scene with her and him where he tries to strike her, and for the first time she fights back.
Oh, yeah.
Freaks him out. Like, and like, so at this point, after she like stands up to him, and then he sees that everybody respects her and not him, he basically goes to steal the dragon eggs and leave so he can sell them. And Jorah stops him, and it sets up the whole thing at the end because so he goes off and gets drunk instead. And meanwhile, they're having this big celebration for her for completing this ceremony. And the priestess has pronounced that she's carrying a boy and that it's going to be the stallion that mounts the world. Her son will be the stallion that mounts the world, which is, I guess, a Dothraki prophecy. So there's all this celebration and excitement, and he comes in, and he basically threatens to kill her if Drogo doesn't do what he wants and go across the sea and give him his throne, like he promised when he gave him Dany. And basically Drogo promises to give him a crown, and he relents, and like he steps back from her, and they give him a golden crown right there. They melt, like they hold him down, they melt down some gold, and they just dump it over his head. And it's like, and you see like Dany has no feelings for her brother in this moment. She goes, I mean, her only response is, he's no dragon. Fire can't kill a dragon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest scenes for sure from this episode. Like, it really sticks out probably for this whole season, that, you know, where Drogo pours that molten gold on him.
Yeah. The only other thing that's really like key in this episode is this is the episode. So they've taken a couple episodes. They arrived at the Eyrie. They arrive, and Caitlyn's sister is badass crazy. She has like this 12-year-old boy. Her son's like 10 or 12, and he's still nursing.
Yeah.
And she's like a loon. And Caitlyn and Tyrion are both like, what the frig is happening? Because Caitlyn hadn't seen her sister in a really long time. And they throw him in the cell. He talks his way out of the cell saying he's going to confess. And he tells all these stories. Like, from when he was a kid, all the bad things he did. Like,
jerking off in a turtle suit.
Yeah.
I think my sister ate it.
Yeah. Anyway. And then they finally cut him off just as he's about to tell the story about the jackass and the honeycomb, which is a running joke through the rest of the series. And he demands trial by combat because he knows they're gonna make him fly. Basically, the little boy is gonna like get to sit in judgment and make him fly. So he demands trial by combat. He asks for a champion, and Bronn decides to serve as his champion. And we see how good. So Bronn, no armor, just a sword, fights this fully armored knight with a shield, and basically like runs around and wears him out until he gets his opportunity. And then he kills him and pushes him through the moon door, so the guy falls to his death. So he was going to die anyway. But and they say like, "Sir, you don't fight with honor." And Bronn's like, "Nope, but he did." And it's just like, it's just another thing where you see that, you know, Bronn's not worried about honor. He's not worried about anything. He's going to win. And he chose Tyrion because he knows that here's a chance where I can like have opportunity if I help this guy.
Oh yeah, Bronn saw Lannister money, right? That's why he helped Tyrion.
Yeah, that's why he helped Tyrion, is he saw Lannister money. So those are the two big things from that episode. So that moves us up to episode 7. And there's a lot in episode 7, but and it has like there's two really big things and right at the beginning of that episode, in the first 10 minutes. We finally meet Tywin after hearing about him for the whole season to this point.
Yes.
And it's this really great scene between him and Jaime, where he's like gutting the stag and like skinning it while he's talking, and he delivers, two really important lines. A lion doesn't concern itself with the opinions of the sheep, which is, basically a Lannister thing. And then he says something to Jaime about, I need you to become the man that you were always meant to be in now. And I need you to become that man now. And which is really key, because what happens at the end of the episode, and we'll get there in just a minute, I'm going to leave it for now, truly sets Jaime on the path to becoming the man he is for the rest of the seasons. And so that was kind of a key. And then the other thing that happens right at the beginning is, and I missed it in the last episode, but Sansa said something in the last episode where Ned figures out that Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen are bastard children of Cersei and Jaime, and not King Robert's kids.
Because of the blonde hair.
Because of the blonde hair. And that's why John Aaron was looking at all the bastards and looking at the lineage book. And so he confronts her, like, out of mercy, to tell her to run, because he's gonna tell Robert. And he's like, take your kids and run. And she delivers another really, well, maybe the most important line of the whole series. And she tells him that he should run, and that when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And
yes.
And so and then there's another thing that follows right after that. There's these 3 scenes that lead up the thing, and it seems to be like a throwaway of these 2 whores in Baelis's whorehouse talking, and they're talking to him, and he starts talking about like the woman he loves, and you see right then the first, and maybe the only time in the whole series you see Baelis speak only the truth, and he basically states everything that's going to happen the rest of this episode is that he's going to screw over the guy who got the woman he loved. And he says it, right? I mean, he says right there that he's going to, like, he says, I'm going to screw him over. And the whole rest of the episode is we find out Robert has been injured, like on the hunt, and that he's going to be dying. And now knowing Joffrey isn't the heir, knows that he needs to like seize control, and so he does a dishonest thing. He changes Robert's letter, like that Robert dictates to him to say that Ned's going to be protector of the realm until Joffrey comes of age. But he changes it to heir from Joffrey's name, and then he goes. So that's the first thing he does when Robert comes back dead or dying, and then. But then he just, it's stupid Ned the whole time. Renly tries to help him. Like, we need to seize Joffrey. We need to get him away from his mother. We need to, like, do this now if we're going to have any control here. And he doesn't listen to Renly. Baelish actually tries to help him in a way. He says, like, let's take power and let's do this right now. He's not going to do it Baelish's way. And he's going to do it the honorable way and get Stannis the throne. He sends a letter to Stannis.
But this is Ned's problem throughout a lot of what happens to Ned, is he keeps trying to put this sense of honor on everybody else, and they don't have it.
They don't have
it. And they react differently than what he is, and like doing things like telling to run, right? And you can't tell her to run because now you've just warned her, right?
Yes.
Now she knows you're coming for her.
Yeah. Like, she knows that he knows, and she knows to be suspicious of him at this point. And whereas if he doesn't do that, he probably does okay. I mean, he has a chance where he doesn't, And then the other things that happen, let's see. So that leads to the end of the episode when Ned confronts Joffrey and Cersei in the throne room, thinking that Baelish is got the city watch on his side, that he has the numbers, that he's going to be able to take control of the situation and get Stannis on the throne and basically throw Cersei and Joffrey in jail. And Baelish says what he said to him at the beginning. I told you at the beginning not to trust me, and he turns on him and he's captured.
Yes.
And Joffrey and Cersei get the power. So it's all laid out in those first few minutes that that's what's going to happen. But Ned's he's honorable to a fault, and it basically lands him in prison.
Yes, he's imprisoned, and they're calling him a traitor and saying that they're trying to ruin his reputation.
Yeah, they call him a traitor, that he was trying to take the throne for himself and overthrow Joffrey, who's the rightful heir. And he's also made a mistake, as he's just told what he's learned, that that Joffrey is not the heir to the throne to Stannis and Cersei. Those are the only two people he's told. Told everyone.
I like that. I just read in the chat. We got Bait the Snake.
Hey, man, I haven't been watching the chat very good. I've been bad about that.
And I really like what he says here about they're playing chess while he's still playing checkers.
Yeah, right? They are. They're playing he thinks everyone is going to act honorably the way he acts, and that's just not the case. And let's see what else happens in this episode that was important. We see John graduates to become a member of the Night Watch and finds out he's going to be a steward. And because he's dumb, he doesn't realize why he's going to be a steward, that Lord Mormont is actually training him for command. He wants him to train him. And Sam has to tell him what's happening before John realizes that being a steward in this case is a good thing and not a bad thing. And so that's important. The other thing that happens is we see Jorah betray Dany to get his pardon, but then change his mind and at the last second save her. And by saving her from Robert's assassin, the guy who's going to poison her, it actually leads Drogo to decide, when he realizes that they're trying to kill her, that he's going to go across the sea and get their son the throne, and he's going to attack Westeros.
Yeah, it pissed off Drogo something fierce, right? Now he wants the Iron Throne for his son, he's saying.
Yes. And I think that's really it. Renly fled. Yeah, so those are the big things. The other thing is, when they're taking their oath, Ghost comes back with part of a dead body from a ranger that was missing with Uncle Benjamin's group, and they bring these corpses back to Castle Black, and that's where that ends for this episode. So the start of episode 8, we see the fallout of Ned being captured, and we see the Hound capture Sansa, and we see Syrio Forel, the first sword of Braavos, save Arya from a whole bunch of guys with a wooden sword, and see Arya escape.
So in this scene, especially when Arya, you see Syrio, and he's fighting, and he's got a wooden sword, and everybody else is in armor with regular swords, and he's beating them. And it comes down to kind of him facing off versus the leader of the guards. And Arya runs off. And while Arya's running away, you can hear all kinds of battle scenes or sounds in the background, screaming and swords clashing and stuff. And she gets away, and we don't really see him die.
No.
Never trust an off-screen death in Game of Thrones.
This is true.
I would not be surprised to see him show up in the next season.
Well, and the other thing that I've wondered all along, and we don't meet him for a while, is if he's not, and I'll get to it when we get there, but I've always wondered if he's not someone we meet later. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but
okay.
And maybe actually not till like season 2, but yeah. So we also find out Ned finds out that the other thing that happens in that scene though is Arya also kills the stable boy who's going to take her to the queen with needle. So she kills her first person during that scene.
That's the first time, and she's like 10 or something like that, 10 or 11. Yeah.
We see Ned learns in the cell that the imp escaped, so he tells Varys to kill him, and Varys won't. John finds out what's happening. Robb basically calls the Banners that they're going to war when they find out that Ned's been captured. We hear then we have a really great scene with Bronn and Tyrion where they're on the road, and Tyrion tells Bronn, if anyone ever offers you money to betray me, he's like, come to me because I'll beat it. I like living.
So I'll automatically double it. Yeah.
I'll beat your price. I like living. And then, so that's a really good scene.
And then there's the scene where the Dothraki attack that village, right?
Yeah.
Because now they're trying to fund their way to get across the ocean.
Yeah.
And attack
instead of just riding around.
And then Daenerys, she steps in because they're mistreating all these women in the village. They're raping them and beating them and stuff. And she's like, nope, I don't stand for it. And she takes them all. She says, all these women are mine. I'm the Khaleesi. I can do what I want. I could have these women if I want. She takes them all, which of course pisses off all the Dothraki warriors because this is part of their spoils for attacking the village. Did I get that right?
Yes, you got all that right. And
right on top of my head, buddy.
So it ends up basically one of the soldiers challenges Drogo for command because of this. And Drogo, you see how good a fighter he is because he just kills the guy super easy, toys with him and then kills him. But during it, he does get a cut on his chest. And it's a deep cut, but it's not anything should not be life-threatening. And Dany turns to this woman from this village who's a healer and lets her treat him.
Yes, the witch.
And it's just because she thinks this woman's going to be, see her as beneficial or see saving this guy as important. So she lets her treat him, and it's just what are you doing?
She essentially kills him by getting the wound infected.
And the other thing that we see that happens here, I'm trying to see what else. So the dead bodies, we go back to the wall, and the dead bodies that they bring back of the Rangers, basically John's been confined to quarters because he did something stupid, but Ghost is going crazy, which is, I don't know if we've mentioned, is John's wolf. And Ghost is going crazy. John follows him, finds these dead guys walking around, stabs them through the chest with a sword. The guy just keeps going, and he finally ends up setting him on fire, and that's how he kills it. But so we see our first white, and yeah. So we're what the heck is going on here?
This is a big scene because that helps to convince a lot of the Night's Watch that the walkers are really coming back for real.
Yeah. And then let's see, anything else that's important? Oh, so there's also a really good scene of Robb and all his bannermen, where basically a couple of them are challenging him because he's a kid, he's young, And basically, him and Grey Wind, which is his wolf, put them in their place, and he basically earns all the men's respect as they're marching south. So that's kind of an important scene too. And finally, we get the last scene of the episode is Sansa begs for her father's life, and Joffrey says he will show mercy, but only if he confesses. Which leads us into episode 9, which is, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you know episode 9 is always the big one.
Yes. Usually episode 9 is a big episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, where does it start off? Do we start off with the whole thing with him?
And we start off with Varys basically telling Ned that he needs to confess and, give what, and Ned's like, you think my life means so much to me that I would, take the black or whatever. And Barry says, yeah, well, what about for your daughters? And so basically sets up Ned making the decision that he's going to, in order to protect Sansa and Arya, who he doesn't know what's happening with either one, other than that Arya's missing. He does know Arya's missing, that they couldn't find her. But in order to protect his daughters, sets up in his mind that he is going to confess, even though he's not guilty of anything. We see, so that's right at the beginning of the episode. We see basically Caitlyn make the bargain with the Freys in order to cross the river. That John's going to marry, or that Rob's going to marry one of Walder Frey's daughters to tie their families together.
Yes.
And therefore the Freys actually join and help them because of this promise. We see Lord Mormont give John Longclaw, which is supposed to be Jorah's, but because Jorah did terrible, dishonorable things and got banished, doesn't have anymore. He puts a wolf pommel on it and gives it to John. So you really see Lord Mormont is taking John as basically a surrogate son, and he's giving him his Valyrian steel sword. You are my heir here at the Night's Watch.
Right.
And then there's a lot of stuff here in the middle with basically Drogo is super sick, and Dany just keeps letting this witch who is the reason he's sick treat him, and she makes a bargain with her to keep him alive after it's clear he's going to die. And they use this blood magic and life. What?
He lives, but he basically becomes a vegetable.
He becomes a vegetable. The baby dies. And all the Dothraki just abandon them. Yeah. So, and it's just so that all goes down. Dany just makes mistake after mistake during this whole series. Once Drogo gets sick and everything else, she just keeps compounding her mistakes. And it ends up costing her him and her baby. So, and basically the entire Khalasar, all the Dothraki, almost all of them just abandon her. And
they won't follow a leader that can't ride a horse.
Yeah. And then we get, so from there we go back to basically the Lannisters preparing for battle. Tywin, Tyrion has arrived at the camp. He meets Shay. We meet Shay for the first time, which is just a whore that Bronn brings him to entertain him the night before the battle. We hear the story of Tyrion's wife. He tells Bronn and Shay that story, which
is horrible story.
Yeah. Of how basically his father, he married this girl thinking she was one thing and finds out Jaime set up, to his knowledge, Jaime set up a whore to pretend. And then his father basically lets all the men, when he finds out about it, rape this or have sex with this girl and pay her, and then makes Tyrion follow all of them and then abandons this girl. So that Tyrion had fallen in love with. So it's a really horrible story. And then when they're getting ready for battle the next day, there's this really another fun Bronn and Tyrion scene, and they're getting ready to, and Tyrion's looking for advice, and Bronn's like, stay low. He's like, stay low. he's like, maybe they won't notice you. That's basically what, because his father has put Tyrion in the Vanguard, basically because his father wants him dead, and it always has. And so, and then we go to
the big one.
The big one. But we find out that Robb has outsmarted the Lannisters, and he went one way and tricked them into thinking he was going the other way. He fights Jaime's army off screen, defeats and captures Jaime, who tries to challenge him to a one-on-one duel to finish it all. And Robb's like, if we do it your way, you win. So we're not doing it your way, because Robb's no fool. He knows that he can't beat Jaime in a one-on-one. So Jaime gets captured, and then we go back to King's Landing. Arya's on the statue, sees Ned being brought out. Ned sees her in the crowd, and then he goes up. He confesses. Everyone thinks that he's going to have to take the black and going to be sent on his way. And at the last second, Joffrey shows what he is and says, "Nope, you're going to die," and has him killed. And
everybody, yeah,
in front of everybody. And if you're a book reader, like I was when I read this in the book, like through most of the book, like Ned, you're thinking Ned's the main character. And even through the TV show to this point, you're thinking Ned's the main character. And they kill him in episode 9 of season 1.
Yeah, don't get too close to any of the characters.
And this is where they set that tone of nobody's safe. Nobody has plot armor. Well, almost nobody has plot armor in Game of Thrones. So they kill Ned off right off the bat, and it's just like, wait, what? So were you like, you'd never read the books, you said. Yeah. How surprised were you that he actually dies?
I was so shocked. I was like so shocked when Joffrey killed him. I was like floored. I mean, it was of everything in season 1, that's the thing that stands out the most.
Yeah.
Like Ned's being head. Because, like you said, it seemed to me like he was being set up as one of the main characters.
Yeah.
And, I figured there was going to be some way he was getting out of this, or, being sent to the wall of the north or whatever. And then when he died right in front of Stanza and Arya, and I was just like, damn, I was so surprised by that.
Yeah, so Bake says, I thought the show was going to go to crap after Ned went. Boy, was I wrong. And it's like, yeah, you think, wait, they've been setting this guy up the whole time, and yet it's, and he's probably the most famous actor in the show that first season as far as, like, known before the show happened.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, he had just come out of Lord of the Rings at that point.
Yeah, and they just whacked him, which happens to Sean Bean a lot in movies and TV shows. So, let's see. We got Bake in here. Melody just showed up. Hey, Melody.
Hi, Melody.
So that takes us through to season 10. So we can maybe wrap this up. We've only been going an hour and a half.
Melody.
So.
Hey, Melody looks suspiciously like Biggie Shaq.
It does look suspiciously like Biggie Shaq. At least looks like his picture. And then, so last episode of the season, Yoren, who we didn't talk about, but was a member of the Night's Watch who'd went south to get recruits, and who'd met Ned and Arya, and who Ned actually on his march out to the thick platform pointed in Arya's direction, basically gets her out of there, and basically dresses her up as a boy, cuts her hair, dresses up as a boy to try to get her out. Aerie, calls her Aerie, gives her a name, and basically says it's going to take her north and get her out of there.
Which would have been good for Arya. It would have been good for Arya if she had made it that far. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to spoil stuff.
No, you're good. And Bake was like, Biggie Shaq is, it's Biggie Shaq. My girlfriend switched my name. I hope I can switch it back. You get like so many every 90 days or something. You might have to wait a while to switch it back. I don't know. I think you get like 1 or 2 changes. But so yeah, so we get that. We get we've been seeing all through the season. Bronn keeps seeing the Raven. He actually in his dream follows the Raven into the crypt and sees his father. So he wakes up, tries to go down there, and they learn that Rickon has also seen his father in the crypt, and we learned that. Then they learn that Ned's dead. So they see it.
So they had those dreams. They didn't know that their father was dead, right?
They didn't know he was dead, but they were having visions of his death before they learned it. We also see Robb and Catelyn mourning, and basically Robb says, "I'll kill them all," and Catelyn says, "No, we'll get the girls, then we'll kill them all."
Yeah.
And then we get the scene of Joffrey taking Sansa up to see her father's head, which is just like horrible. He's just terrible to her.
It's an important scene to just really show like how cruel Joffrey is. Like he doesn't like to just do that. Like there was one thing to kill Ned in front of everybody. I guess there was kind of a reason for that in that scene, but to take Stannis up there and just to show her dead father to her is just really only for cruelty, right?
Right. And he has like his night hitter, and this is the first time we see like something that happens a lot during season 2 is you see actually that Sansa, despite being a whiny like kid all through the thing, actually has a little steel to her in the fact that like he like stare at it and she says, "How long do you want me, Your Grace?" And like she basically gives the answer that she has to give, not the like she shuts off her emotions and just gives the answer that she has to give in order to protect herself.
Yeah, and she definitely doesn't react in the way that Joffrey wants her to.
No. And you actually see her contemplate pushing him off the walkway, and the Hound stops her. Like she steps out, and she could have just pushed him, and I think she might have if the Hound doesn't stop her right there. From there, we get the King in the North scene, where basically all the Northmen pledge themselves to Robb as King of the North. We get Catelyn confronting Jaime, and she hits him with the rock, and he confesses to pushing Bran out the window, but he won't confess to why, whereas Cersei did confess to Ned why. She was like flat out, yeah, they're my kids. Back when they were confronted earlier. We get a really good scene between Tywin and Tyrion, where Tywin's all pissed off with his generals about Jaime being captured and them being outsmarted. And Tyrion basically says something that none of the rest of them are smart enough to figure out, which is any chance at peace and getting Jaime back probably left when Joffrey took off Ned's head. And Tywin actually like calls him his son, and like, which is kind of a big deal for Tyrion, and then sends him to King's Landing to be the hand of the king in his stead and bring Joffrey and Cersei in line so they don't do more stupid shit. So,
all right.
And then basically the last thing that's really important.
It's really important.
Is basically at the end of the episode, Dany's doing the funeral pyre for Drogo. She ties the witch to the funeral pyre. She places the eggs in the pyre, and they light it on fire. And Jorah knows she's going to do it, but she's like, "Don't worry." And he's like, he wants to stop her, but she marches into the flames. You think, okay, she's dead.
Yep, that's the end of her.
Yeah, and then it flashes to basically the morning after the burn, and he goes up and like digs some stuff up, some of the debris that's left off of her, and she rises up and she has the 3 dragons.
Yeah, she is there, the mother of dragons, finally.
Mother of dragons. So
they're all about 6 inches long at this point, kind of cruising around her.
Yeah. So that's yeah, they're little bitty, but she has dragons, and so that's where season 1 ends. So good grief, we went forever, but there's so much in.
Yeah, it is tough to get that much information. Like, one of the best things about Game of Thrones is that every episode is just packed with so much stuff.
Yeah,
you'll never be bored.
No.
There'll never be a period in any season where you're like, oh, come on, this is boring, right? No, you'll always feel like there's new stuff happening and crazy stuff happening. And season 1 really set the whole tone for the rest of the rest of the show, right? And stuff was going on here and stuff was going on there. And it's good the way they, established that cut shot where they talk about this guy for a while, then they cut to this guy. So you never get too much of one story in any episode either. So
yeah. And that very much is similar to the books, because they just jump between characters and locations, and he does. So the way they went about that really matches the way George wrote the story. So any other thoughts about season 1 before we wrap this up?
There's lots of nudity in season 1.
There is lots of nudity. Yeah, Dany starts the season naked. She ends the season naked. So.
True, it is. It's true. The first scene, she gets stripped, and then the last scene, her clothes are burned away.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of like whores and stuff, and then, but really, like, if you think that we had 10 hours, maybe a little over 10 hours worth of television, and so much happened that you and I couldn't even get through talking about it in 2 hours, right?
Yeah. And yeah, there's so many things that I had marked in my notes that I just skipped over because I'm like, it's not really that important. It's cool, but it's not that important. So it's.
I know. And there's lots of times that I was sitting here going, oh, I want to interrupt him and talk about this, but it's not that important. We got to continue on. So anyway, maybe next time, 5 episodes. Do a half.
Maybe, yeah. My goal had been to get this done before the new season started, but I started way too late. So I'm definitely scrapping that goal. I think my goal is to get, right now, I'll maybe shoot for season 2 next Monday, but I will see. So we'll do season 2 next Monday, and we'll either do the first half or we'll do all of it. We'll see. I don't know. I don't really want to go 2 hours each time, so that's a little long.
Yeah, it is a little long. It's not. Yeah, it's tough for everybody to watch it. You and I. Anyways, I really appreciate you having me on, though. I hope you'll have me back for some more.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you joined me. It was a lot of fun. I wanted to have somebody to interact with, because otherwise it's just me talking about it. It gets a little boring. So
yeah, it's always easier to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and chat with, right?
Yeah. So no, it's always better. So yeah, feel free if you're available to keep joining me. I know at some point Bake wants to jump in, and I know Bear Island's going to jump in at some point. We definitely, when we get to Liana Mormont, we got to bring Bear Island on for sure. So
yeah, remember, a lot of stuff happened in season 1, but there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout every season, and as we get going,
yeah, I mean, we barely mentioned some characters that are super important later, and there's so many characters that we haven't even met yet that are just make huge roles in what happens. So
yeah, there's still new characters showing up all the way up until last season, but
well, it looks like Biggie and Baker in the chat, and that's probably it. So everybody else abandoned us already, so I can't blame them.
That's okay.
So thanks for everybody.
Catch it on the replay.
Yeah, they can catch parts of it on the replay and watch us at 1.5 speed or something, so that it goes faster. So, well, thanks again, Dave, Mr. Miracle. You got anything coming up that you want to plug? Not that anybody.
I just put up my 80th anniversary Batman contest.
That's right, you did. I need to make a video for that.
Yeah, you do.
So I will try to get on that maybe this week.
Yeah, there's some pretty good prizes you can win, and it's not terribly hard contest. So if anybody that feels like entering, more than welcome.
It makes us plenty more deaths to come. So yeah.
Oh yes.
So lots more violence and bloodshed on its way. So
getting told there's some other stuff going on.
Yeah, so I don't know. I may or may not have something come out this week, like recorded video. Otherwise, I just have my top 10 that'll come out Saturday, and maybe my Sunday live stream, and then season 2 next Monday is the plan, at least. So
Cool.
I'm actually already 4 episodes into season 2, so I think I'm giving up on trying to get all of it watched before the premiere. I'll just make it up as I go, because I got to watch like 2 a day in order to get them all in before the premiere. And
Okay. So Jason, I gotta bounce here though, bud. I really appreciate like I said, to have me on, and yeah, it was great to do a talk with you today.
No, that's great. Thanks for joining me, and I'm gonna set this off. So thanks everybody, and we will catch you next week maybe.
Yep. Bye guys.
Bye.